All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 42 of Chris Goglin's GEMP game review series. I am your host for the evening, Chris Goglin. Thank you all for tuning in and joining along. As always, we'll get started out and see if there's anything going on in the GEMP lobby. Doesn't look like much going on right now. We will take a quick peek at our OCS standings and our GEMPC brackets. Two major events going on right now, of course, ongoing on a month-to-month basis will be the OCS qualifiers. It's got a handful of people who've already finished their games. We're only a third of the way through the month, and these guys have already managed to play all 12. It's 8-4 here for Gavin and Jared. Doesn't look like those are going to hold up. Hayes can get to 9-3. That's probably not going to be good enough either, with Ryan Surson sitting here at 8-1. Chris Kelly at 7-2. Bastion's 8-2. Yeah, 8-2. So I'm sure he's got an opportunity to certainly leapfrog over some of these people. And then you go a little further down here. You got 6-2 Brenson, 6-1. A couple of world champs right here, both sitting at 6-1. Never a real big surprise there. A couple guys at 5-2, 5-1. A couple of four, and there's a whole bunch here at 4-1 and 3-1 and whatnot. But still plenty of games left to play. Like I said, just over a month in. I'm sorry, just over a third of the way through. The other thing going on right now is the GEMPC. Oh, I forgot to load up the GEMP bracket. That's what I wanted to do. Oops. But you can see here if a number of people have already picked up 2 wins. That would mean they won both games in their matchup. And there's a few people here who split games, had some more competitive matchups. Hold that thought for 1 second. All right, so let's take a quick peek at the updated GEMP bracket. See what we got here. All right, so Chris Kelly won and advanced in his match. Brian Fred won. I was victorious in mine, and Pierre won his match. Looks like this was a. I put these players at about even playing skill, so even though their ranking numbers were a little further apart, they're pretty close to about the same caliber player. We'll call it a minor upset. So I'll be playing Pierre in the next round. We'll see what we get that set up for. What we got here? MJ Turner split games but pulled off the win. Barry and Brad Kipple. Jared beating Marines. Barnes advancing over Yodad. That seems expected and anticipated. Even though their numbers here look like they're, that I would probably have these two players actually flip-flopped in terms of numbers in the standings. Plagueis with a win. Steve Buscemi. I watched some of these games here, him and Tardis. Those were some pretty close, pretty competitive games that they had going the other night. And so congratulations to all these guys on picking up some wins so far. Killer Kiwi with the upset over Endor Grand Prix top 8 finalist Ryan Surson. And Stubley picking up the win in his matchup over Gavino. I know Gavin was certainly someone that people thought might be ready to make a breakthrough in terms of whether OCS or GEMPC. Certainly could put together a couple of good games and get a run going this year and really show how far he's grown in the last 12 to 24 months. Almost playing mostly exclusively online. He has been to a couple of live events when he was living in the Indiana area. But I don't know if now, I think he moved to California. I don't know if he plays at all in the SoCal group out there. But he's online constantly. I mean, as you saw, he's already finished his 12 games for the month. He was done by like the 6th or the 7th last month. He's always playing games in the the other open leagues and things like that. He just loves Star Wars and he's playing as many games as he can. And we applaud your dedication and your efforts to improve. And congratulations to Stubley on picking up an upset there and advancing himself into the next round. Still plenty of games left to go here in round number one. A couple people could start their round number two games. I know I'm trying to get my game scheduled with Pierre. I will be on vacation at the end of the month, so I'd like to get at least a little further ahead so people aren't waiting around on me uh, to keep the bracket and stuff moving along. But thanks to Batmouse for putting this all together. I know people have really been enjoying it so far. We got 30 predictions, people who filled out their prediction bracket. I don't know what this means, how to open and submit for votes for like what you think is like the best game of the round or something. I don't know what this whole thing here means, but just skip that. Um, but yeah, and then if you're looking for any in real life events to play in, of course the OCS goes on month to month. You've got the Match Play Championships coming up in 6 weeks in New Brunswick, New Jersey. We've got 33 players signed up. Really hoping to get some more here, get up into the high 40s would be ideal. I don't think we're going to get 64 this year, but it'd be nice to get somewhere in the 48 to 52 range. I think we've had over 50 just about every year, except like the first two, when people were still trying to figure out just exactly what the heck this tournament was all about. So hopefully things will pick up. I know we had a little issue with the hotel, but there is another one just up the street where I already booked my room, got a great discount. That was another thing I did, of course, want to mention. If you haven't booked your room yet, there was a great discount going on. They were doing like this March Madness kind of thing at the Heldrick here hotel. I started working, trying to get a group discount. That didn't pan out, but they were doing some type of March Madness thing. Yes, there it is. So if you book your room in the month of March, and your stay can be anytime until the end of April, then the room rate is only 143 a night, which is very similar to what the MPC hotel was charging. Because it's 112 plus taxes, but the regular room rate at the Heldrick is normally like 160 something. You can get that down a little bit by prepaying for your room. If you pay it all in advance, then they cut you down to like 155. But then obviously that's non-refundable. So this special here, cutting it down even further, another $10, $12 a night. Certainly something you'd want to take advantage of if you were considering going. And again, it's only like a 3-block walk, and it's it's going to be late April. It's going to be pretty nice weather in New Brunswick, and it's lots of stuff going on, and you'll pass right by all the bars and restaurants that are right there on the main street. So, a chance to get to see some of the local culture of lovely New Brunswick, New Jersey. Other events coming up. If you're in Europe, you've got the European Championships. That's scheduled for early July. And then the other big announcement. Hang on a second. Is the dates and times and locations for the North American Continentals. Since the World Championships will be in Bochum, Germany this year, the North American event always gets elevated a little bit. Normally it's like U.S. Nationals or something, but we bump it up to North American Continentals whenever Worlds isn't in the U.S. We will be returning to Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is where the 2016 World Championships were held. It's the same hotel, so if you were at that event or were thinking about going to that event, you'll know exactly where it is and where you're going to be. This has also been dubbed the John Anderson Memorial Tournament. Of course, you can see on our page there, if you scroll right down, John Anderson, Puck 71, from the Minnesota area. I think he actually lived in South Dakota for a little bit as well, who passed away back in late September of 2018, I think it was, just before our World Championships. And, obviously we wanted to do a big event and, pay tribute to John one more time. John traveled to a number of major events pretty much consistently. He's pretty much the one guy you would expect to see at just about every major tournament. He went to Europe at least once or twice. I think he was there in 2012 when the World Championships were last held there. But he was always in Seattle every year, in Texas every year, came to New Jersey every year. plus wherever the World Championships was. I mean, John was at every event, um, and to show our respect to John and everything that he meant to the community. We've named the tournament after him, and you can find all the details about that right here on the forum for that, um, and what's going on with that as well. I know some people are hoping that would be back in Atlanta after U.S. Nationals did so well there last year, but I think obviously when you see this part, the location that we chose certainly makes a lot more sense. And perhaps Atlanta will be a prime target for a 2020 tournament. So that's all we have to say about that. Let's close some of these windows here now. All right, so we caught everybody up on that kind of stuff. Doesn't look like there's much else going on here, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to move into our first game review. This one was submitted to me by Apollyon. He will be playing Old Allies, a very popular deck that we featured here, and he'll be taking on Arebelspy, who will be playing the growing in popularity RalOPS. Certainly two decks that you should expect to see if you go to any major tournament or compete in any of the OCS stuff online. These decks are kind of all over the place. I think the best versions of RalOps probably haven't quite been found yet. Players are still going through the mechanics and, optimizing their lists. Let me just hit refresh this time just in case, because I'm not seeing any chat comments, but then again, I didn't see them last week either. So maybe you guys aren't chatting, or maybe the thing just glitched up on me again. Oh, see, now I can see Wayne chatting. So, yeah, so obviously I missed whatever you guys were saying before. But thank you guys all for joining us. The other thing, of course, I always have to remind everybody of is if you're not following the Players Committee channel, hit that little heart up there in the top left corner. If you have a Twitch Prime subscription, make sure you renew your monthly subscription. You can see when your expiration date is if you look on your own personal subscription page, and we are doing the incentives for that. I did remember to point that out last week. So obviously you will get in real life stuff for subscribing, including some new tokens and cool things like that. And the poker chips. I don't have the new poker chips here, but the old poker chips, including the purple one that people seem to like, I happen to have an extra one sitting on my desk right here. So this is the purple poker chip. That is the given out to high level events and things like that. Thank you very much for following. And if you have the old Twitch Prime thing, you can do the subscription as well. We always appreciate that. If you scroll down a little bit too, you'll also see links to both my personal page and Wise, Tom Kelly's personal page. We both stream games from time to time, and we'd appreciate the support and the follows. And then you can follow along and catch up on plenty more Star Wars action. I also stream Hearthstone games if you're interested in that at all. I don't think Tom does. I think Tom plays Hearthstone, but I think he strictly only streams Star Wars. So, all right, housekeeping stuff out of the way. Let's move on here. Actually, let's take a look at this RalOps objective. So basically, you flip it by getting Imperials at 3 RAL tier sites, and opponent controls no RAL tier locations. Unlike Imperial Entanglements, you're not restricted to playing just Imperials, but since all of your benefits rely around Imperials, it's pretty much a given that you'll be playing the bulk of your cards being Imperial only. The one advantage being in this is that you can play things like EPP Mall or U3PO that you can't play in Imperial Entanglements. You could float some other droids as well, potentially like a Probot or a P-59 or something, if that wanted to work for you. Maybe there's some cool droid that does something to protect your starships or something. I don't know. But at least you have certain other options and availabilities. All right. And then, of course, when you flip this objective is when all the cool stuff starts happening. You immediately get to go get any one card out of your deck, and that's not once per game. That's just each time you flip it. So when they flip you back, you put a card from hand in your used pile, and you flip back to the 0 side. And then when you flip back from here, you go get a card out of your deck. So you can, as it punishes you a little bit when they flip you back because you have to put a card down. Sometimes that might help you, though, because you can put some high destiny piece of junk out of your hand that you don't need, like that third Emperor, and track that 6 around, and then clear them off some sites because of that, and then flip yourself back and go get a better card that's more useful to you than, an extra copy of something or a high destiny interrupt that was, matchup specific or something like that. Like if you had I Have You Now and you're playing against, you know, old allies, there's going to be limited opportunities for you to use that card. I mean, there's still people, General Calrissian, Captain Hera, stuff like that you might get one extra destiny out of, but also tracking a 5 might be better for you. So, and then the big thing, of course, is the drain modifier, drain -1 at non-RAL tier locations, and then the destiny manipulation, which is to total battle destiny. So it gets around things like Imperial Justice and whatnot that say battle destiny draws can't be modified. Um, and as some people have pointed out in the forums recently this week, they're a little upset that it's being used offensively. You limit you and your opponent to one destiny draw, and then you draw, a 4 or a 5, and then suddenly you add like 3 or 4 to your total, and it's like, oh, I've got a destiny of 8, and they just have their regular destiny draw. Um, and that is something that you do have to consider when you're playing against RalOPS, and they are on the flip side, and Imperial Justice is on the table. All those fun things going on. Joe's going to start Quat Drive Yards, which helps out his Star Destroyers, also lets him get Battleground systems. You usually, I've seen in this deck, usually most of the time they're playing Kashyyyk, something that's easily reachable from Parsec 3, so their ships can move between 3 and 6. A little extra force activation there. He's going to be running the bigger Imperials, the Ability 3 Imperials. Like Imperial Entanglements, there's kind of 2 character packages you can play. There's the Ability 2 guys, which you then play Imperial Arrest Order to boost their forfeit, and things like I Can't Shake Them to deploy them from reserve deck directly. And then there's the Do You Have a Code Clearance variant, which uses Ability 3 Imperials, which make them forfeit +3. It also does some other stuff regarding opponents' retrieval, where retrieval cards get stacked here, and then it reduces their retrieval each time they try and retrieve. So if they do something like Jedi Levitation to retrieve a guy out of their lost pile, it gets stacked here. Now, every time for the rest of the game they try to retrieve force, it's reduced by 1, because that's the number of cards that is stacked there. So that means they can't put Walkling out of play and retrieve 1. If, like, Draw Their Fire was out and they initiate a battle, they don't retrieve now. Firepower or Weapons Display Shield, they don't retrieve anymore. So you have to be very careful with this effect on table, and the order in which you use your retrieval engines and the timing of when you play stuff, because if you get caught and do something silly early, it can really have an impact over the long haul for the rest of the game. And then Imperial Domination. This one is going to limit Joe to just Imperial characters, so he's telegraphing that he is not playing U3PO or EPP Maul, as we mentioned before, because this card is lost if you're non-Imperial character or starship on table. Unless you occupy fewer locations than opponent. If you win a battle, you retrieve an Imperial, and during battle, you take an Imperial just drawn for Destiny into hand to cancel and redraw it. So you draw a low Destiny character, you just take him into hand, which is great, and then you get to redraw that Destiny into something better. Old allies to start in the typical strike planning, Walkling, a Brave Resistance, no surprises there. So if these 2 decks were kind of left to their own devices and just kind of set up their own thing, RalOPS would probably win out simply because of the drain modification. Subtracting 1 from each drain, I think that would limit Old Allies' overall damage. Old Allies' limitation kind of caps one source of damage at 1, but RalOPS is going to drain for 1 at like 4 or 5 different locations. So there's really nothing to cap or reduce. Whereas if Old Allies were trying to do drains of one at each location, two at the one site, two at the system with the Falcon. Those would both be reduced to one, and everything else would be reduced to zero. Uh, so Raltier would probably win out there. The other thing, of course, as Joe just did, he used Quat Drive Yards to pull Mustafar. Mustafar then gets the Castle. This is another great activation package that we see in a number of Darkside decks these days. I've seen it in this platform, Endor Ops, Set Your Course. Um, there's probably even some Huntdown decks out there that are running Kuat as an effect. Get Mustafar, get the Castle, then use the Castle to get Vader, and kind of just run from there. And then you could play some token space. You could just play a couple of just generic Star Destroyers or something, because they draw if unable to otherwise, and they're immune to less than 4. So could certainly give you some options. So there are plenty of platforms to run this Kuat for Mustafar, Mustafar for Vader's Castle activation platform, which came out as a result of Set 10. And these are the tournament foils this year. I don't know if I showed these. I know I showed these off a few weeks ago, but if I can find them, we can do that again real fast. Hey. This is given out to the top 9 at major events. This is a foil version of Vader's Castle. And the other one is... It's Luke's site, the Octu. The saddle is the other one that's given out for the light side. Last year it was Starkiller Base and Profundity. This year it is the 2 sites. Yeah, Dorsch, you can do Vane and then use Vane to pull the thing. That's just kind of how you go. You can do it that way, but if you wanted to get a little extra activation, if you were planning on playing space, some form of space anyway, which occasionally you do see some Huntdown decks that do try and go a little more balanced. They're not the typical just slam all your guys down at sites and beat the crap out of them on the ground decks. Some people do like to try and experiment. I've seen versions playing, Kuat or Combat Response and, matching ships, and they'll play Fett and his ship and Baron and Saber 1 and whatnot, and just try and, hold a system down to get an extra battleground, which you may end up needing depending on, if you're playing against Throne Room or something. Maybe not the most ideal way to play it, but certainly an interesting variation on the Huntdown platform. Yeah, I agree that it being called the Saddle is kind of a silly name. I don't know where the name comes from. Take that up with the design guys. Chris Kelly, you hanging around? You know why they call it Saddle? But in the meantime, we'll move things along. Oh, and Joe's got Imperial Domination number 2. That's the other thing I didn't mention about this card. It's 2-dotted. The original was 2-dotted, and the virtual version was not changed. So by making it 2-dotted and staying 2-dotted, you can have 2 copies on the table, which means that you can trigger each effect once. So each time you win a battle, you can retrieve an Imperial. So if you win a battle, you can retrieve 2 Imperials. If you draw an Imperial for Battle Destiny, take them into hand using this effect. And then when you draw an Imperial for the second Battle Destiny, because you happen to put 2 guys in a row, you can use the other domination to take that one into hand. And it can end up, sometimes it feels like overkill, it's like a win more kind of thing, and sometimes it's just, it fixes so much of your deck circulation and problems that you're just like, this is kind of stupid that that you're allowed to have 2 of these cards in play at the same time. But it is limited obviously to just Imperials, so there are plenty of decks that it doesn't have any use in, and it doesn't always come up too often. Sometimes like I said, it is kind of like a win more card. It may not necessarily help you win too many games. And then there are easy ways around it, which is your opponent just has to get to more locations than you, and then it turns them off. He also gets out Decree Virtual, which won't do anything with the damage reduction text, but the ability to ditch it to draw a Destiny if unable to otherwise could certainly come in handy. And we'll see a fairly standard start here from Apollyon. He's going to get strike plan in to get General Calrissian. Calrissian deploys -2 aboard the Falcon, uses the objective to pull the site. The site pulls Rey for -2, so she deploys for 4. She gets a card. She pays 1 to move over. She hops on into the ship. Usually the ship then takes off to the system, where you now have a power 9, immune to less than 4 ship. That has 2 guys on it that both forfeit for 7, so it's kind of hard to get through both of them. Calrissian adds to the maneuver. Adds 1 maneuver, draws 1 if unable to otherwise. You've got 7 ability between the 2 pilots, so you get around Zuckuss. Rey adds 1 to your total battle destiny. So this is kind of a formidable thing to try and deal with on the very early turns of the game. So that's typically why you'll see most Old Allies players go for this standard setup. It's very hard to interact with this ship on turn 2, turn 3, and this happens to be a drain +1 system when the Falcon's there. So usually they can get off at 1 or 2 drains and cause a little bit of force loss before the rest of the board begins to develop, and then the game takes its place from there. Got all these little spaceport sites. They all have different game texts going around. He's going to masterful move for a Gick. That may come in handy as well. There's something else here too. Force generation +1 at each route tier location. So all these 1/1 sites are actually 2/1 sites, which certainly makes this deck a little bit more playable as 1/1 locations. You'd have to play like all 7 or 8 generic sites just to get enough force to get going, or pull other systems and things for extra force activation. It kind of takes you away from what the deck wants to do by doing it that way. And the other generic sites, the swamp and jungle and whatnot, their game texts are just ridiculous. So it's a good trade-off here by giving the extra activation and protecting the spaceport sites from UNITA, so you're just kind of limited to just sort of playing those unless you really want to get punished by UNITA. I'll get battle order out to slow him down. And then he's just going to draw a bunch of cards. The other slight downside to going with the code clearance versus Imperial Arrest Order is you can't pull the spaceport docking bay, so you're limited to just being able to pull 1 site a turn unless you happen to get one in your opening hand. So if you wanted to try and go a little faster to flip a little sooner, you don't necessarily have that option of like pulling a site and then pulling the docking bay, like turn 2 or turn 3, and then dropping your guys and getting the flip before they can come interact. And we do see that Joe did burn an Imperial Command already, which was grabbed. It's probably a good card to grab in this matchup, as I think there'll be a number of people in space and whatnot, and we'll certainly have our options and opportunities to battle. And kind of, like we said, with things like Justice that are going to limit destinies anyway, but Imperial Command is also a pain as well to work around. Typically, early characters you want to pull with a Brave Resistance. You usually want to get either Poe. Solo is a possibility. Finn is also a really good one. If you're expecting your opponent to come battle you in space, where your Falcon is, Finn deploys as a react for free to where Rey is, or Poe. He also has 6 more forfeit, and he adds 3 to the power when he's a passenger. So you grab him, usually, pretty quickly, as early as possible. So when they come battle your Falcon, which can hold 2 passengers, you deploy Finn as a react for free. So now you get 3 more power and 6 more forfeit on this thing. And, when you have to forfeit somebody, well, Finn seems like a pretty good guy to forfeit. He didn't cost you anything to put down. And, gives you 9 extra essential, credit there with the 3 power and the 6 forfeit. Looks like Apollyon's going to go for the flip now, which makes sense. He's going to have to be careful, again, with Joe activating 14 and having 6 force saved. There's a pretty good chance that he can interact at 1, if not 2 locations. And he does not really have a lot of defensive cards here. Um, and that certainly could make this a bit of a risky play. He didn't get Finn, so he doesn't have a defensive card to help the ship out. Um, he's only getting 1 Destiny up there. He's not getting multiples. On the ground, he's got this defensive card, which kind of helps a little bit against people being targeted. And this is an old Ben text here that kind of brings them back if they're just forfeited from a Jakku site. But he can easily drop 2 or 3 guys. I mean, he's probably going to go for the flip. But he could go for the flip with a couple of really cheap generic people and then drop something big here, and suddenly your total battle destiny is +3, +4, and could certainly crush the Falcon here. So this seems like a very risky play from Apollyon. And if his Falcon goes down, he's certainly going to have some activation issues and some just battle issues everywhere between battle order and keeping his objective flipped and all that kind of stuff. But he did luckily pick up the perimeter scan, which stops Blizzard 4. We'll take a look at that action real quick. This is a good play, obviously. He has the Goldenrod card out, which would have cost this 2 to pull the Imperial, so it wouldn't have been for free. But you can target their just deployed maintenance card. They can't battle or allow opponent to download cards for a remainder of turn. So works very well against Blizzard 4 and Boba Fett Bounty Hunter, and keeping them from battling and doing things. Fett more from the battling part, Blizzard 4 from the downloading part. Also happens to cancel Trample and protect your guys a little bit as well. The matchups in the top left corner, Dan. You don't know people's screen names? Come on. And there's the 3rd Imperial. He has to do it the hard way and deploy a guy from hand. So he uses Vane, Krennic, and Simalu. That will flip his objective and let him go get any card he wants. And then he's going to put the Emperor Shuttle over here. And I'm sure we'll see an Emperor go there for 2 because of the Goldenrod shield. Vane also used his once per game text. Once per game, he can upload a card with Vader in title. He got Darth Vader with lightsaber, so now EPP Vader's in hand, and then once per turn, he can activate a force, so he does that as well. Good utility character, perfect for this type of kind of drop setup Imperial. He's also very good in Hunt Down, like we mentioned before, for protecting Visage, because he deploys -3 to a site with Vader in game text. It's like the Hollow Theater or Meditation Chamber. So he goes there for 1, then he activates 1, basically making himself free, and then you can pull Vader into hand, and then you can deploy Vader and do all kinds of stuff with that. But in this particular matchup, he's just a good utility Imperial, decent deploy forfeit, but he does, again, activate 1 every turn, and he fishes you out another character, which is always a good thing. Joe doesn't have anything else, though, to back up this Emperor, so he's going to pay 1 for the maintenance on Blizzard 4. He does have the Decree. He could pitch if he needs to draw a Battle Destiny there, but I guess we'd have to bank on the fact that with these 2 force saved, he's anticipating playing a barrier. I guess expecting that his opponent, 1 ship is on the table, and he probably only runs 2, maybe 3 other ones. What would be the odds of him having 2 of them in hand at this time? First one deploys, gets barriered, and then the second one comes down behind it. Like he said, he could always, if necessary, ditch the Imperial Decree to at least get a Destiny so he doesn't get hurt too bad. We did see he did pull the Gick earlier as well, and we do know he is running other ships, so losing this ship wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing that can happen. It's kind of a calculated risk. Could be also a misdirect because if his opponent spending his time going over here fighting him, then he's not addressing the issue over here with the 3 sites on RAL tier. So could be just a little bit of a bait and switch kind of play. A misdirect, as the magicians like to call it. Oh, and there goes the accuser from the used pile. This is the ship that I believe deploys as a react. Yeah, it deploys -3 as a react. So it's a Star Destroyer that you can deploy for 5, which is pretty cool. He's going to send Solo back, and he's going to grab Poe. Doesn't find any sights in there. So he could go Tantive, Hera, Poe, and try and go after this Emperor shuttle. He doesn't really have any ground characters in his hand right now that he could deal with. He's going to 3PO card first, gets that perimeter scan back, which isn't much help. And there's the barrier, as we anticipated. Now it'll remain to be seen what Joe has in his hand to back it up now that he's set the trap and his opponent took the bait by deploying the ship and getting barriered. Oh, looks like they reverted. And he's going to do something different instead. He's not going to deploy Poe. Guessing he's going to move his characters from the 2-1 to the 2-2 site and then possibly move the Falcon. He'll keep all his ladies together. And then, yeah, it looks like he's going to move the Falcon to the Tantive. And then draw a couple cards instead. Wedge is certainly a good pickup, as is Rogue One, because people piloting Rogue One count as Rogue Squadron pilots, I believe, so then Wedge can then cancel Destiny's draws with them in space. Otherwise, you typically see Wedge used more on the ground with the Rogue Speeder, which could also be a thing. You could see, Rogue here with Poe and Wedge go try and clear out some sites. And Joe's going to spend 4 and play an Evader Monarch Lost to look at his opponent's hand. Doesn't find any duplicates there, but he does find valuable information in terms of knowing what characters his opponent has. He's got the Speeder, he's got Wedge, he's got Poe and Hera. He does have another ship. He finally finds a barrier canceller, so he can't rely on this trick again. But he also realizes that his opponent doesn't have something like Punch It, which sometimes pops up in old Allies decks. Makes the Falcon completely immune to attrition, adds a couple Battle Destiny, and could really make this a blowout situation. He also finds that Finn is not in his hand. Finn being the other card. What's that? I'm getting kind of good at this, I think is the title of it. If Finn is with, I think, Rey or Poe, he adds 2 Battle Destiny, I think is how that card works. There, we'll make it a little bigger. Hopefully, now can you see the names now, Dan? I'm sure you're just looking on your phone anyway, so. So a Rebel Spy will go ahead and drain for 3, 1 at each location. There's Mahdi as a passenger. There's Tarkin as a pilot. So Grand Moff Tarkin, as we know, adds destiny when he's with an Imperial leader. Mahdi is an Imperial leader. Mahdi also lets you play Imperial Command to limit to their destiny. Subtracts 1 from forfeit of Rebel pilots that same system. Okay, but I know he deploys -2 as well, so he can deploy cheaper. And in this particular case, he'd make General Calrissian only forfeit 6. I don't know if that'll come into play. It certainly could when you're adding 3 to your total. And the docking bay is still not out, so, and he's just going to run away. All right, so he got what he wanted, which was he got around battle order for the turn. He got his opponent to commit some more cards to the table, and now he's going to kind of reload and find an additional strategy to deal with, what his opponent's presenting. But right now, he's winning the race. He's causing 3 damage a turn. His opponent is causing 1 here. While Vader on table, unless Amidala at a Mustafar location, that's a -1. Well, there's Vader's not on table, so that doesn't apply. So it's 1 and 1, and then he retrieves 1 with Rose. So they're essentially both kind of trading damage at this point. And they both have plenty of cards left. They're both in the high 20s in terms of total remaining life force down. So certainly plenty of time left remaining. We're only on turn 4 to, not to force anything. And he can play a little cat and mouse in terms of moving the ship around for a little bit, knowing that his opponent is probably likely to chase him. And he can continue to build on this. He got some guys out, got a second destiny, drew a bunch of cards. If he finds a second ship or he finds an Emperor, then suddenly this becomes a lot more lethal. So, very cagey play, and that is kind of the style that Joe does like to play. He very much enjoys the move phase of the game, and that whole style of moving and shuffling people around, moving all the pawns around the board. And, he's slowly developing a slightly bigger board than you, and developing more in his hand while you've committed more of your stuff to the board and you're chasing him around. And eventually, these guys get stuck in front of him and get 4 battle destiny drawn against them, and he clears the whole thing. And you're like, how did he do that all in 1 turn? It's like he didn't. He slowly built into it piece by piece over 2 or 3 turns, and you just kept following him around the board until you got smacked in the face. But we do get a big move here from Apollyon. This is probably going to draw out the Gick that we saw Joe take in the hand early, as he drops Poe and Wedge in the Rogue 3, as we talked about earlier. 9 power, 2 battle destiny, and because Wedge is with another Rogue Squadron guy, he could cancel a battle destiny, which he should still absolutely do. Even though he drew a 0, you still have to cancel it, because 0 for a total battle destiny still can get modified by the objective, and he can add 3 to it and make it a 3. If you cancel a destiny draw, then they have no total, and therefore they can't add anything to it. No total and 0 play out the same way, but they are conceptually not the same thing. 0 can be modified and added to using things like the objective from RalOPS. So, hey, look at us. We're up to 16 people watching now. Thank you guys all for joining us tonight. As always, if you're not following the PC channel, make sure you hit that little heart up there. And then if you scroll down a little bit, you find the personal pages for both Wise and for myself. And we appreciate your following us as well. I'm really trying to get to 50 subscribers. Then I can start hopefully, continuing to build that. I'm not subscribers, just followers. Then I get to 100, baby steps, keep things going. But 50 is my first goal. I think I'm at like 30 right now, so I appreciate the support, guys. So, very successful battle. Does draw out the Gick, but he chooses not to move. He moves the ships over, but he doesn't move Rogue 3, say, after Simalu. Arebelspy's got an 8-card hand. So again, he could contest things in a variety of spots. Oh, and there comes Min Kun, who gets a shield. Min also has funny game text. Once per game, use one force to place opponent's just played interrupt out of play. Key factor in this particular matchup is that would be a card then that Solo wouldn't be able to use his once per game to play from the lost pile. He also gets you an extra defensive shield. And I think he's actually a leader too, isn't he? Yes, he's a Royal Guard leader. So he'd be another leader to add a destiny with Tarkin. So if you happen to need to forfeit Mahdi or somebody for a reason, you could forfeit him. And then we see Kir Kanos show up as well. Kir usually pulls Min, but he had them both already. He's the one who cancels a non-immune to sense interrupt once per game if in battle with an Imperial. So something like a Punch It or a Rebel Leadership, he could just outright cancel. And this Emperor's Shuttle sans the Emperor is actually looking pretty decent right now. So it's only 4 power, because it only has 1 pilot spot, and Tarkin's the only one adding to it. Dark Collaboration. Here's a card you haven't seen since the Premier Sealed Deck game. If Tarkin and either Taj or Mahdi are in a battle together, you may add 2 Battle Destiny, or cancel Restricted Deployment, or Rebel Barrier. Similar to Skywalker's in that it has extra game text and Destiny Adder text. Tarkin with Mahdi, add 2 Battle Destiny. Tarkin then also adds 1 himself because he's with the Rebel leader, and suddenly this little Power 4 little ship is now drawing 4 Battle Destiny and adding 3 to the total. Oh, here's another pro tip. Pause this for a second. So the first Destiny that a Rebel spy drew was Yasain Asard, which is a 3. Apollyon's objective, once per battle, he can subtract 2 from a just drawn Destiny. Well, there's 4 Imperials here, and Tarkin says if you just drew Destiny less than the number of Imperials here, you can cancel and redraw that. So it's going to be hard to do regardless because he's got 4 Imperials here at this point in time. So anything less than 4, Tarkin could cancel and redraw. Also, as we saw with Imperial Domination, because right now he's occupying 4 locations, his opponent is only occupying 3, so these are active. If he just drew an Imperial, he can cancel and take it into hand. So modifying characters with the objective, making it -2, would be a bad move because it's very likely that your opponent would then use one of their multiple game texts, in this case, to just redraw that Destiny, and the modifier would then be wasted. You're subtracting 2 from it would go unused, and in this particular battle where he's going to have 4 total Battle Destiny, that could come in handy. So he draws a Tarkin, which I spoke to. Should have met. I wish Apollyon had seen this before because he just did exactly what we just talked about. He draws the second Destiny, which is Tarkin, which is a 3. He uses the objective to subtract 2 from it, making it a 1, and then he triggers one of his Imperial Dominations to just redraw the Destiny and take it into hand. So now he's going to make his draw here, and this one he's already burned his once per game, or his once per battle modifier. He'll make him redraw the Emperor with You Do Have Your Moments. And that will mean that he won't be able to redraw the rest of these, because now he only has 3 cards remaining and he has 3 destinies left to draw. So he's going to draw the remainder of his destinies, which means he won't get to use Tarkin or Imperial Domination. So in this case, it doesn't necessarily... Jesus, he's playing 3 of them. So in this particular case, I wouldn't be surprised if he's playing 4 of them, because it is a 5 at least, right? But yeah, but in this case, it's not necessarily going to make too big of a difference. So he ends up with the 13 for a total battle destiny, which would get Lando and Rey, Lando and the Tantive. It also means that Darkside wins the battle, because Lightside drew a lowly 2. So now they get to retrieve Imperials. So that Vane that died gets to be retrieved, and then he'll look and see if he has another guy. He does not, so there's nobody else left to retrieve there. The retrieval happens in the power segment once you declare the winner and loser, so before he forfeits anybody is when he does the retrieval, and then he'll forfeit everybody else afterwards. He's going to go with Lando and the Tantive as his 2 options for what to lose. He's got Solo, who makes us immune to 6 and adds a destiny. He's going to Walkling out of play to retrieve the Tantive. Okay. And we do see he does have the Gold Leader in hand, which will be a very key card because that will limit the number of destiny draws as well. Although now he's only back to getting 2. You might want to save that Hear Me Baby though, because there's probably a good chance there's an I Have You Now in here. We saw the Crush and the Evader Monarch combo in his Lost pile already, so it's probably an alternate start against certain matchups, maybe against like mains decks and things. He'll run the Crush for the Clash protection, and then the ability to pull I Have You Now. Rose will go ahead and retrieve Lando. That's pretty handy. You gotta be careful here if you're gonna try and battle this Vader, because there's a possibility. Oh, that's gonna come in handy. There's a possibility here, of course, that there could be an I Have You Now against Wedge to get a second battle destiny. Wedge could cancel one of them, but this thing is only immune to less than 5 from Poe. So with adding 3 to the total, unless he draws the Spaceport Docking Bay for the 3rd time, there's a pretty good chance he's going to crack the immunity and force one of these guys to be lost. But Gold Leader and Gold 1, he's got the text that says the opponent can't react, and they have to first use a force to draw a card for Battle Destiny here. Now, Tarkin does get around that because he draws if unable to do otherwise. So his first part of his text would let him draw 1 even if he didn't have the force available to spend for it. But that would be it. If he does have the force, then he does have to spend it to draw because he does have another way. And he wouldn't get to add a second one because he doesn't have 2 force to spend. But if he can use this force, say grabbing an interrupt or something like that, then Tarkin would still give him at least 1 battle destiny. Yeah, the little shuttle that could. And there's Hera, who's going to add a second destiny. And here comes Solo, who's going to add a 3rd. Solo adds 1 with Rey. Hera adds 1 with an Imperial or 2 Rebels. He's going to throw back Rose, a 5, take Chewie, a 1 out of the deck. And then he's going to leadership and get, was that Admiral Satura? And the leadership does get grabbed. So as we said, I was going to get Radis. Okay. So as we did mention, he could freely spend that force because Tarkin's going to let him draw 1 anyway, and he was only getting 1 to begin with. But he's going to battle first on the ground. And there is no I Have You Now or anything. Okay. opts not to Jedi Lev that guy into hand and redraw it. So Darkseid will get 1 destiny, which will get canceled. He subtracts. Alright. Well, now I'm not sure what's going on here. Because he used his objective again to subtract 2 from it, and his opponent then went ahead and used domination to redraw it. So that's 0 for 2. And if you cancel it, your opponent doesn't get the option to redraw it with anything. So he let him take Vane into hand when he didn't need to. He also used... Did he not use Wedge? He did not use Wedge to cancel that. Maybe there's something in the chat where he realized... I was going to say, he didn't play anything that would prevent him from canceling the Destiny, so what the heck just happened there? Woohoo! Thank you, Smite. Well, Ardra, actually, I believe, but thank you very much for subscribing with us on Twitch. Alright, I gotta go back here because something here does not make sense to me. So he draws his 2 Battle Destiny, he gets to 7. His opponent draws Vane. He uses the objective to subtract. He uses domination to redraw it. He then draws Tarkin. I was going to say, did he play like a Dark Time or something back here that I missed? Or you can't cancel Destiny draws for the remainder of turn? Because I'm not seeing it. Is it Krennic? Does Krennic have text? Oh, there it is. It's on Krennic. While at a site, opponent may not cancel or modify your battle Destiny draws here. Okay. So he wasted the objective because Krennic stopped him from modifying it anyway. And then, so he won't have it available for this Space Destiny there. And then he also can't cancel it with Wedge because Krennic's there. Okay. Sometimes I always forget about that guy. Yeah, Krennic. Yep, thanks, guys. I figured it out. It just took me a second. I'm used to this guy just doing the undercover spy thing where he makes you lose force. I figure sometimes he has other text. As if that wasn't good enough. Alright, so he's going to draw a couple of Destiny here in space. Is that -2 just once per battle? Once per battle. Okay, so that's part is once per battle, so it didn't waste it. It's not once per turn. It's once per battle. Alright. So then it didn't really matter. Never mind. I take it back. Oh, he draws the 0 again. And that's going to clear out a couple of guys. But he does have some really good forfeit because of the code clearance adding 3 to the forfeit of the Imperials. So, I mean, Tarkin just covered 9, and Kyrkanos covered 8. 7? Which one is he? He's one of forfeits for 7. It's Min who would have forfeited for 8 last turn. Okay, so this has been a pretty... And he does forfeit the docking bay finally, too. Stop drawing that for Destiny. So it's been a pretty back and forth kind of game. Old Allies' board position is certainly holding up so far. They desperately need to find an Emperor. He's going to alter it from the lost pile to try and cancel the Tarkin's bounty so his opponent can't get a card. And he's targeting Leia with it, who's ability 5, and is successful. So there's a very strong once per game move using the alter. If you cancel the Tarkin's bounty as it's coming into play, then the effect of getting to take the card from used pile or from force pile into hand doesn't get that far. The same way you can like control a ice storm or something like that the moment it's deployed. So Tarkin's back, Vane's back. One thing we haven't seen Joe do much is the exchange text using the RalOPS objective, where you can exchange stuff from hand. There's Dark Collaboration number 2. Yep, because there's Mahdi. Mahdi was the only guy he kept. So now he's going to get himself a nice 4 Destiny again. He's going to have to pay for each of them, though, because of Gold Leader. See, I told you he was playing. I have you now. Apollyon really getting use out of this. You do have your Moments card, too, because especially with Gold Leader, when he has to redraw that Destiny, he has to pay again to redraw it. So he may not be able to get all of his Battle Destinies again unless he wants to leave Krennic kind of hanging out to dry there. I mean, he does have the decree, but if he tracks around that 3PO that he retrieved, or I'm sorry, that Wedge he retrieved and uses 3PO, he could get Wedge back and kind of, smack Krennic in the face here pretty good. Of course, there is the possibility he can use the objective to get the Gick back into hand as well. Doesn't everybody move free with the street, Chris? May move free between here and related spaceport sites. It's not just Imperial leaders who move for free. So he does draw his 4 Destiny, which gets him a very large total of 15. 15 being 1 more than Rey and Solo's combined forfeits. He loses the control tunnel vision from the used pile. Loses Solo, loses Rey, then loses the Falcon. I'm not sure why he lost the control tunnel vision first. It seems like he just lost an extra card. If he was trying to get it into the lost pile to then solo it or something, he's already used his once per game solo pull. Maybe he's just tired of drawing ones for Battle Destiny. But it seems like that may have been a card he didn't need to lose. Oh, well, that's true, too. He can run away with the street. I forgot that that text is free, because that's another stupid thing. See, there's a lot of moving parts to some of these decks, and that's why I don't recommend new players play them. Even though a lot of the cards are easily attainable because they're not very expensive, the mechanics behind them and involved with playing them well can be a bit convoluted and are a lot harder than some of the other decks that are available. There's just too much text, there's too many different interactions, there's too many different bonuses and things coming from different areas, and it can be overwhelming for a lot of newer players. So as tempting as it might be to play with like old allies or RalOPS because they're the popular decks and they seem to be really strong, um, control isn't always the easiest mechanics to learn. There's a lot of in-game decision making that can be problematic as well. Looks like it's go big or go home time here. Gonna keep using that general Leia text to keep retrieving people. Chewie can take a shot as well. Pick off that Krennic guy. He's gonna miss because it's gonna be Lando and the Tantive. Nah, he had to spend a force in between. Oh, but he will subtract 3 with a close call. So that will miss now. So this will not be a full sight clear. Yep, because I'll have a 5 for Battle Destiny, which will just get 1 guy. And on the flip side, Dark Side draws 3, which becomes a 5 from the objective. Which can't be modified by opponent. That's stupid. So, Krennic says opponent may not modify your battle destinies, right? Yeah, but you still can. That's kind of dumb. So he pumps it up, makes it a 6, and Chewie has to die. As opposed to just having to lose dash for the 5. And dash is going to run away. And we'll see Gold Leader move to RAL tier, which should force the flip back. And it does. The downside to that, of course, is that he is no longer at a battleground system, which means he's going to have to pay, even though he gets the ability to drain again, now he's got to pay for him. Wow. He top decks the It's a Hit with 3PO right as he moves to RAL tier and then can use it to cancel a force drain. If that was planned, well played, sir. If it was accidental, well, sometimes better lucky than good. And he does get hit with the drain of 2 over there. So he loses 3 total this turn, which isn't terrible. Again, Rose is retrieving 1. Leia's retrieving every time he initiates a battle pretty much anywhere with all his resistance characters. And Arebelspy is out of cards in hand right now. He's going to spend a few extra force. He's going to move some people around. Vana and Krennic are together. Blizzard 4 is together. Is by itself over at the street now. He's going to have to... I don't think he can flip back again because he lost his extra sight. He got rid of the docking bay. So I don't see a way that he will ever control enough locations. Because it's 3 sites you have to control in order to flip. And I don't think he'll be able to control. It's going to take a while for him to get through all this to be able to control 3 different sites. So at least for the next couple of turns, I would expect Arebelspy is going to be stuck on the 0 side of his objective. And he'll pay to drain for Apollyon's going to pay to drain for 2, and then spend an extra force for the retrieval, which is good. He's mitigating some of the damage here. And he's going to send Cornhorn to try and take out Tarkin. And he's going to get barriered. And that is unfortunate. I guess he can slide Padme over. Or move everybody over, but... And then the speeders will move over in front of Blizzard 4 and block another drain. So yeah, so he's got Leia and Corrin together, and Padme and Rose left behind. And then Gold Leader can hyperspeed 4. He could go all the way to Mustafar, which would probably be the safer play, and he does. Looks like that's Raddus aboard. Raddus doesn't add any power, but does give a little extra ability, so it can draw. And again, he draws the card that cancels barrier during the draw phase of the turn. He just got barriered in. A little bit of bad luck there, unfortunately. But Apollyon's ahead in this game. He's got a pretty good lead right now. He's up about 7 cards. And he's, they're both kind of trading about the same total points of damage at this point, so... And even with all those dominations in play, it seems like Arebelspy might actually be running out of characters. Right now they're at the same number, 4 battlegrounds, so nothing else going on there. Mara's ship holds 1, and when it's piloted by an Imperial, and the ship itself is alone, it adds a destiny. So now that would draw 2 there. Tarkin gets back in, and the ship moves back up. So now he's kind of trapped in between the 2 battlegrounds, also known as a rock and a hard place. Wait, Blizzard 4 can use the street? May move free between here and any related spaceport site. Doesn't say your characters can move here, so Blizzard 4 can violate the land speed 1 restrictions in terms of where AT-ATs can move and use the streets game text to move to the other side of the planet. Decipher. Can we errata that card? To only let characters move? So now he gets to drain for free. So he gets drains of 2, 1, and 1. And he was playing the General as well. So he has the General to work with the Dark Collaborations as well as Mahdi. Look at that. Throwback Premiere, guys. And then Rose will retrieve him a card. So he did 4 damage that turn. Rose retrieved 1. But now he's kind of stuck. With what to do with said ship here. You get the tracking us, you get it could be worse. He gets the it could be worse. The toolkit, that's not going to be helpful. Just going to cycle that back and see if we can find something better. none of these guys really help much. He's got to move this thing somewhere, and Wedge will give chase to Blizzard 4. He can leave this behind now. He only has 8 force left. There's not much he can do in terms of deploying, battling, and drawing Destiny. Oh, he is just going to rough it out in front of Vader here. He probably would have been better off in front of the shuttle if he was going to stick at one system versus the other, because here he's one possibly getting 2 Destiny. Here he's guaranteed to get 2, because Radis doesn't stop that, and he doesn't have another leadership in hand. If he does get knocked out of space, that could certainly be a problem, because then he's going to have to start paying for these drains. Try to make the game a little bit closer, a little bit more expensive, take a few more turns, because then he's got to pay to drain, he's got to pay to retrieve, and it's going to limit what else he can do. He does, it could be worse to drain a 2. Honestly, he could use the objective and reduce that to 1. Right? There's nothing that stops you from doing that. Lose force, reduce that loss to 1, may not be further reduced, so he could have reduced this to 1, and then he could have paid 1 to cancel one of these drains over here, and then he would have had 1 extra force active. I don't know if that matters for anything, but that would have been another way to do it. Two Destiny, and then I have you now. So he just got hit with 3 Battle Destiny now. And his opponent's going to have to spend the force to do it, but he certainly has the resources available. And he's going to make him spend the force first for drawing the cards before he then plays. You do have your moments for the 3rd time this game to make him redraw it. He might actually work out okay here, because what he's going to draw for the 3rd one here is then going to get redrawn with the you do have your moments. So all that work, the I have you now, the extra force all spent, and Darkseid gets a whopping total of 4, which is exactly what Radis forfeits for. So nicely done there. Obviously a little bit of luck too in terms of what cards were left that got drawn. But having to only lose Radis and being able to keep the ship on the table, that should pretty much seal things up for Apollyon here. Blizzard 4 can run away. He can bounce a guy over with him. And then pay upkeep on it, and that'll pretty much be his turn. And then on the flip side here, he's going to get drained for 4 again. Lightside's going to retrieve 1 and really kind of take this game down. And then, he could easily put someone like Solo piloting this thing and clear Mara out. He's going to track back to the it could be worse that he used, so he's going to be able to mitigate additional force loss. And well played game by Apollyon here. Certainly, I was critical of some of his plays earlier in the way he used his objective and things like that, but even still, he still played very well in terms of setting himself up. He really got a lot of mileage out of Gold Leader, and you do have your moments. And even with losing his Falcon fairly early on in the game, was still able to maintain a pretty sizable space presence and keep the damage on his opponent. Yep. There's that solo guy. He can battle. He can retrieve one more with Leia because a resistance guy initiated a battle. And he's just going to slowly put this game further out of reach. He used Decree, but this gets... Oh, because he doesn't have enough force. He doesn't have any force left to draw. I was going to say, he gets a Destiny anyway. He's using Imperial Decree because the draw if unable to otherwise text on Imperial Decree, similar to Tarkin that we talked about earlier, gets around Gold Leader's requirement to spend a force. Oof. Redraws a 2 into a 1. Ouch. Sometimes that's the downside of being able to retrieve characters from your lost pile and whatnot. You end up drawing them for Destiny in the following turn. There's the Grand Inquisitor. And he's going to go get prepared defenses, which he can then cycle another card back into his deck with. Still has a total of 0, though, so... And that's going to go ahead and wrap this game up. Apollyon scoops it. I'm sorry, Arebelspy scoops it because even though he doesn't have to lose the ship, he'd have to peel 3 more cards. He's already well behind on life force total and board position. And, like we said, a well-played game by Apollyon, or maybe Old Allies is just that good. Some combination of the two, I think. I think he played it. I think the deck is good, and I think he played it pretty well. So, hats off to him, and thanks for submitting the game link. Certainly enjoyed reviewing some cards and reminding myself of some cards that I don't interact with quite as often, like Krennic. That took me a minute to figure out just what the heck was going on there. And then we got to see, obviously, the domination and code clearance and all these other interactions. And, dark collaboration, which I don't think anybody's seen in about 15 years. I don't know if Joe jumped on the Tom Haid bandwagon of find a card from Premier no one's played in 15 years and try and see if you can make it good. But, certainly was an interesting game and matchup there. I'm not going to review a second game tonight because it's already been almost an hour and a half. We will just take a quick peek in the GEMP lobby, see if there's anything going on here. Looks like we've got a couple of GEMPC matchups going. Huge and Stimpy are playing. Looks like Old Allies against CCT. And Apollyon's taking on JM, Diplo, and Map. Let's pop into... see how our good buddy Huge is doing. Playing a little late for him. Huge being one of the European players. Also known as Kevin Japp. He is the guy who makes all those wonderful foil cards that I was showing off earlier, and then he ships them across the pond to me. He's also, the OCS foils that you get, the prize support foils that you get. He's the one who prints them and ships them overseas to me. So if you happen to go to like the European Championships or the World Championships in Germany, and you get to meet Kevin, buy him a drink because he does a lot of work making a lot of foils for a lot of people. So at least we can do is give the man a pint, right? Oh, Tartag gonna do a little streaming of his own tonight. Awesome. His playing against the treaties, is that his GEMPC matchup, Dan? Coming up here in about 2.5 hours. Okay, so it looks like we got CCT. Looks like he's gonna carbon freeze. He's got Akbar as his hostage. Carbon freeze. Okay. Well, relatively unprotected. It's one of those cards that floats in and out of some people play it. Some people just assume that people aren't playing the stuff that it works against because it's a fairly popular counter card. You also can't start it, so you can Walkling for it, though, I think. to get it into hand if you're playing Walkling. But Huge is running the GEMP crashing Ancient Watering Hole. Very risky move. This hopefully I believe everything they fixed with this card, but it certainly was crashing games for quite a while. There was a thing here where it was always looking for a rep. So if you weren't playing Agents in the Court, then it would look for your rep, not find you had a rep, and then it would just not know what to do next. Um, Hopefully it's been working fine for him if he's going to play it in this type of competitive format. I don't really know what this card does, so let's keep reading it. Alien characters of 5 different species on table. Drains are +1, total battle destiny is +1, aliens are forfeit +1. So he's going to have alien characters of 5 different species. It's a lot of aliens. I don't know who he's planning on using. Obviously, you've got Solo, who's Corellian, so there's one. But for the other 4, I don't know, man. Chewie, there's a Wookiee. That'll double up. Calfal, Harksef, Boshek, Melas. I don't know who else he's got going on here. Oh yeah, it's a decent card, Dorsch. Not a lot of people play it. Especially if you're playing things like Sense and Alter, because you don't want to end up blind drawing a 7 and screwing yourself. So, all right, let's pop over to the other game real quick and just see what this board state looks like. I hope Gogolin doesn't pop into this game. We're waiting on a baby. Well, I did hop into this game. They did disable the action timer, so that's good. But obviously, JM is going to continue to run his personal timer, which really could impact the outcome of this particular matchup. He's going to have to play pretty fast through the rest of his turns if he's already burned almost 20 minutes on turn 1, trying to put the kid back to sleep. Come on, John Michael. Get it together. Obviously not anything going on there. Uh-oh, we're carbon freezing. Oh, and he draws the ice planes and misses. Does that actually kill the spy? To kill the character? No, it's if the total is less than 5. If destiny less than 5, the captive's lost. But you add 3 from the console and 2 from controlling the site. So he was adding 5. So even if he drew the 0, he was okay. Now, if they had occupied, they'd have subtracted 2, and then Akbar would have been dead. And then he could have just run away and not have to worry about losing 8 cards. But all right, well, this game's going to take a while, and it doesn't look like there's a whole lot else going on in the GEMP lobby tonight. So I think I was going to wrap up tonight's show. I've already been yapping for an hour and a half. My throat's getting a little sore. But as always, thank you guys very much for tuning in tonight. If you're not following the Players Committee, if you're not following my personal channel, Wise's personal channel, we definitely appreciate the support. If you want to click that little heart and just give us a follow, even if you don't watch our channel that often, just follow us. You can turn off the notifications so you don't get the emails and stuff. Just click that little bell icon that's right next to it. And then, of course, continue to just subscribe to the PC channel, especially if you have a Twitch Prime account, you have an Amazon Prime, you link them together for free. Every month you get 1 free subscription. Give it to whoever you want, but if you give it to us each month, then, if you do it enough months in a row, you get some real stuff this year, which was covered on the forums. There's some cool of the poker tokens, the poker chips that I showed earlier. These are different colors, not quite these exact ones, but they, look like they're real weight and things like that. Clay poker chips. And, you'll get those mailed out later in the year, along with a couple of foil slips. If you don't have a Twitch Prime, Amazon Prime account, you can still pay the $4.99 and just hit the subscribe button and just buy a subscription. And then that will also earn you the same rewards for doing so. You just don't get the added benefits of everything that happens at Amazon Prime. An Amazon Prime membership costs about $120 a year. So if you think that you're going to subscribe all 12 months to get the prizes, you might as well just buy an Amazon Prime subscription for $120 because it would cost you $60 to give us $5 every month. And that other $60, you get a free year, or you get a year of Amazon Prime for $60, which gives you all of the video, all the movie streaming, free shipping for a lot of stuff. You get like 2-day shipping on a lot of things, so a lot of advantages to Amazon Prime. But I'll see you guys back here next Monday on the Star Wars channel, and throughout the week on my personal channel, I'll be streaming some matches when I feels like it. But you guys take care, have a great night, and we'll see you next week.